Here's a hot controversial opinion. Stuff costs too much nowadays. Prices for everything just keep going up and up with no signs of stopping, and our hard-earned money just doesn't seem to go as far as it used to back in the good old days when 2p would buy you groceries for a week, or so my grandma likes to say. Even video games are affected, with price tags forcing many players to wait for an eventual sale before they pick up the newest releases. But things have gotten particularly out of hand with the rise of downloadable content and microtransactions, as companies will now have all new ways to try and grab our hard-earned cash. It's not so bad if you're at least getting your money's worth, but far too often games are trying to charge us for things we don't even want, or worse, things that should have been included in the game that already drained our bank account in the first place. Shall we look at some? Let's look at some. I'm Ben from TripleJump, and here are 10 games that charged players real money for stupid things. Number 10. The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Horse Armor. In today's gaming landscape, dominated by online storefronts and premium currencies, it can be hard to remember that there was once a time before any of this existed. If there's one culprit that can be blamed for bringing those halcyon days to an end, there's an argument to be made that it's the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. For all the memes and mockery this game has received over the years, it was a revolutionary experience for the time, though not always in a good way. When it was announced that Oblivion would be receiving content expansions in the form of paid downloadable content, one of the first games to do so, many were curious to see what form it would take. While they were expecting additional quests, storylines, and customization options, what they got was horse armor. Though advertised as being useful for protecting your trusty steed, it was purely cosmetic, a simple decoration for your mount. The debacle kicked up a storm of derision as fans lambasted the entire superfluous and overpriced add-on. The message seemed to be received by the developers, as future content packs were loaded with far more meaningful content, but one can't help but wonder how much the current state of gaming was shaped by this tentative first foray into the realm of DLC. Bloody Todd. Number 9. Dragon's Dogma 2 Fast Travel. Games keep getting bigger and bigger in every way. Longer development times, larger download sizes, and bigger worlds to explore. That last one comes with pros and some very painful cons. While more real estate ideally means more content, it also means more walking from one place to the next. The concept of fast travel has been a balm to footsore heroes for years now, but the director of Dragon's Dogma 2, Hideaki Itsuno, has publicly stated his distaste for the mechanic that he feels detracts from the crafted beauty of the game. Maybe that's why the title seems set on punishing anyone who wants to use it. Fast travel in Dragon's Dogma 2 requires 2 items: port crystals, which you can set a location of your choosing to create a fast travel point, and ferry stones, which are consumed in the process of fast traveling. Port crystals are found in very limited quantities in the game itself, making it difficult to get where you need to go, but you can ease that burden by loosening the purse strings and dropping a few quid to buy more. When players discovered that the game, which already cost full price, was charging extra for its fast travel system, they were livid, causing the game's average reviews to plummet overnight. Definitely not the kind of first impression you want to make. Number 8. Tekken 7 Frame Data. When it comes to knowing the technical ins and outs of their favourite games, no one is more serious than fighting game fans. Being able to seize even the slightest opening can snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, and spotting those openings takes a level of eagle-eyed attention to detail that few possess, without lots and lots of time spent training, that is. Training mode is probably the place where many players spend the bulk of their time in a fighting game, learning the ins and outs of a character, their moves, combos, and ever-important frame data, how long an attack takes to wind up, and how quickly you can act afterwards, those sorts of things. Understanding a character's frame data is essential to high-level play, which is why many fighting games include this information as a basic part of training mode. Not Tekken 7, however. Tekken 7 charged you if you wanted to access such forbidden knowledge. While it only cost a couple of dollars, the principle of charging players for a feature that had been standard in fighting games for years chafed the entire community and had many up in arms about the increasingly ludicrous monetization of the genre. Paying to win is one thing, but paying to learn how to play? Well, you better learn how to block, because that is a low blow. Number 7. Dead or Alive 6 Hair Colors. Character customization is a fun side activity in many games, sometimes more fun than the game itself. This, of course, makes it a prime target for monetization because people will always pay for clothes. But there's still a limit, right? The Dead or Alive series has always based its appeal on, let's just say, aesthetics and leave it at that. But by the time number 6 rolled around, it seemed the developers' focus was more on playing dress-up with pretty girls than on the fast-paced technical combat that fans had fallen in love with in the first place. Dead or Alive 6 had an egregious amount of DLC, offering literally hundreds of costumes for your favourite femme fatales. They also offered different hair colours, though these had to be paid for, and to be clear, you weren't paying to unlock a new colour, you had to pay a fee to make the change at all. And if you got tired of your lime green hairdo and wanted to return to your natural look, well guess what? You had to pay again. This was such a dirty thing to do that the publisher was forced to change course and let players simply unlock hair colours permanently, as well as refunding anyone who had spent money before the update. As they say, hair today, gone tomorrow. Fun. Number 6. Dead Space, slightly faster bullets. The original Dead Space was a creepy, gory horror game all about surviving on a derelict spaceship, crawling with mutated zombies using a small arsenal of guns. Weapons and ammo are scarce, however, often forcing players to rely on their wits in order to avoid being torn limb from limb. For players who would rather have a bit more firepower, the game released a DLC pack including several upgraded versions of the default weapons. Were the weapons more powerful? Did they carry additional ammo? Or have any special abilities? The answer to those questions are no, and of course not, silly. They just shoot faster. Yes, by forking over some of their hard-earned money, players could gain access to weapons that are exactly the same as the ones you can get in the base game, except for an increased rate of fire and a fashionable black and yellow weapon skin. Nothing else is different, so you're just paying to tweak a single variable in the game's code. Even the people at Xbox seemed to think this was scummy, as the DLC's description advised prospective buyers that they won't receive a refund should they be disappointed with their purchase. If that's not a red flag, I don't know what is. Number 5. Team Fortress 2 Engagement Rings. Love is a beautiful thing, and if we're lucky enough to find it for ourselves, it deserves to be treasured and commemorated. And what could be a better symbol of your undying devotion than some overpriced DLC? Team Fortress 2 had proven to be a truly evergreen game, continuing to attract a sizable devoted fanbase even more than a decade after its initial release. The free-to-play game had continued to draw in money over the years by introducing cosmetic items that players can acquire, for a price, of course. To celebrate Valentine's Day 2012, a new item was added to the shop, a big, gaudy engagement ring complete with diamond. Rather than just being another accessory for characters to wear though, this ring was meant to be gifted to another player. Should that player accept your proposal, 2 of you would be officially engaged in-game with a celebratory announcement sent out across the game's servers. A cute little novelty, but how much did it cost? Well, if you wanted to pop the question to your in-game sweetie, it would cost you $100 American. Yes, it's pricey, but it's probably far cheaper than a real engagement ring, providing your prospective partner is cool with being proposed to through a video game, of course. Marriage, the ultimate multiplayer experience. Number 4. Metal Gear Survive Save Slots. When you buy a game at full price, it should be yours to play as you wish, and that includes sharing with friends, family, or roommates. Konami, the longtime publisher of the Metal Gear series, would seem to differ on that opinion, however. Metal Gear Survive was a very contentious release for the franchise, coming on the heels of the departure of creator Hideo Kojima from the company under dubious circumstances. Given his lack of involvement, many fans were against the game even before it released, and that didn't seem to change much after it came out. Players railed against the game for many reasons, most prominently its requirement to always be connected to the internet and its gratuitous microtransactions. Survive charged players for just about anything, up to and including additional save slots. If you wanted to start a second playthrough with a different character, it was going to cost you real-world money. The payment was justified as a charge for players who shared a copy among their household, but considering the game was already being sold as a full-priced product, this was nothing but corporate greed at its corporate greediest. Boo. Number 3. Tales of Vesperia Leveling Up. Every game has some bits that nobody really likes, and for RPGs that's usually the dreaded process of level grinding, the endless monotony of battle after battle just to accrue enough experience points to raise your character's stats. If only there was an easier way, many have said, and fortunately for them, there is! Tales of Vesperia was a console-exclusive JRPG for the Xbox 360, and accordingly, it took advantage of the burgeoning Xbox marketplace with an assortment of add-on content available for purchase. One piece of said content on sale was a pack that, when purchased, would instantly boost your entire party by 5 levels. A convenient way to sidestep a bit of tedium perhaps, but it didn't stop there. Since the marketplace didn't allow repeat purchases of the same item, there were multiple listings available, allowing players to raise their party by as much as 40 levels in mere moments. This was a contentious inclusion, to say the least. While some players with busy schedules were glad to have a way to bypass some of the level grinding, others grumbled that they were essentially being allowed to buy their way past the game's difficulty, something they felt was a new level of money grubbing. Number 2. Asura's Wrath, The Ending. They say that good things come to those who wait, but they never said anything about having to pay for those good things. Asura's Wrath wore its anime influences on its sleeve, with the whole game being styled as if it were an episodic television series divided into separate arcs. When the game's story ended on a rather abrupt cliffhanger, players were disappointed but not entirely surprised, seeing it as a setup for an eventual second season in the form of a sequel. Those players were in for a shocking twist when instead it was announced that the game would be receiving additional post-launch story DLC. Serving as a continuation of the game's plot, the DLC was advertised as the game's true ending, offering a definitive conclusion to the story that was left unfinished at first. This naturally rubbed fans the wrong way, as it left them feeling that the game had been deliberately carved up and released in an incomplete form so that the ending could be sold for extra money instead of, actually including the ending to the game in the game itself that fans had already paid for. The saddest part of the whole affair? Fans are still waiting for that sequel. Number 1. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild Quality of Life Features. Nintendo was a bit slow to pick up on the DLC hustle, but once they warmed up to the idea, they certainly ran with it. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild represented many firsts for the series. It was the first Zelda game to adopt an open-world design, the first to include proper voice acting, the first one made for the Switch, and the first main series entry to include paid DLC. The first of 2 DLC packs was focused around a new set of challenge areas that tested the player's mettle while also bundling in a number of extra goodies. Among those goodies were a harder difficulty mode and several quality of life improvements for the game, such as an item that lets you set a single custom fast travel point anywhere you want and an option that marks your path through the game on your map. While these are all indisputably helpful features, they feel like things that should have been added to the game by default rather than charged for. It would seem that Nintendo realized these weren't things people would want to pay for, and so tried to sweeten the deal by bundling them into a larger pack. And what did the second DLC add to the game? Horse armor. Boom! That's right, we brought it full circle. You're welcome.